Welcome to the debate. In December 2022, roughly 1.5 billion people stopped whatever they were doing to watch 22 men chase a sphere across a patch of grass in Qatar.
Which is just a staggering number, really.
It is. That is nearly a fifth of the human race, captivated by the exact same event at the exact same time. When we look back at the ruins of ancient empires, Rome, Greece, the Han dynasty, we usually measure their global reach by the tangible architecture they left behind.
Sure, the stone roads, the aqueducts, that kind of thing.
Right, we think of conquest in terms of heavy, immovable infrastructure.
Yeah, we view historical influence as something forged in iron, which is honestly a very industrial way of looking at human connection.
Exactly. But if we look at what is arguably the most successful global conquest in human history, it didn't leave behind a network of stone roads. It left behind a ball. Today, we are examining the global phenomenon of football.
Or soccer, depending on where you're listening from.
Yes, soccer. We're looking at how a game eclipsed ancient variations like China's Cuju or Italy's Calcio Storico, and just completely overshadowed modern rivals like rugby, cricket, and baseball to become the undisputed global game.
And when we talk about this scale, we are talking about a phenomenon that cuts through language, borders, and economics entirely. I mean, it is a shared global consciousness that is almost difficult to conceptualize until you see a World Cup final bringing the planet to an absolute standstill.
Which brings us to the central question of our discussion today. Why did football conquer the globe? I will be arguing that football's unprecedented global supremacy is fundamentally a triumph of institutional standardization and visionary structural design.
Okay.
Because without the deliberate engineering of rules, the organization of leagues, and the scaffolding of international governing bodies, the sport would have remained a localized curiosity.
Well, and my perspective is fundamentally opposed to that. I argue that football's global reach is driven entirely by its intrinsic simplicity and its grassroots adaptability.
You don't think the institutions matter?
Not in the way you do. The game did not conquer the world because of boardroom mandates or engineered rulebooks. I mean, it conquered the world because it is radically accessible, allowing it to be organically adopted, adapted, and possessed by literally every culture on the planet.
Okay. Well, to understand why structure matters, I think we have to look at the inflection point. For centuries, people played variations of football for local pride, usually in these chaotic, uncoordinated matches. But passion alone does not create a global ecosystem.
Sure, but it's the spark?
It's the spark. But the true paradigm shift happened in the late 19th century. In 1885, professionalism was legalized in England. And this wasn't just a rule change, it was an economic revolution.
Right.
It transitioned football from an amateur hobby for, gentlemen to a viable career for the working class. The best talent could suddenly dedicate their entire lives to the sport.
But a career requires a reliable stage, right?
Precisely. And that is exactly where structural vision comes in. Enter William McGregor, who in 1888 created the Football League. Before McGregor, matches were totally unreliable. Teams would just cancel at the last minute.
Sounds like my weekend rec league.
Exactly, a total mess. Fans never knew if a game would actually happen. But McGregor instituted a fixed, mathematically sound schedule. It was a revolutionary model that every major sports league on Earth eventually copied.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And this structural triumph was cemented in 1904 when FIFA was founded, unifying the sport under one game, one rulebook. That framework made international competition logistically possible. Standardization created the canvas.
Look, I hear the timeline, but you're giving all the credit to the scaffolding instead of the building. Let's ground this in reality for a second. If you're listening right now and you played youth sports, think about the barrier to entry.
What do you mean?
To play ice hockey, your parents had to buy hundreds of dollars of gear, rent ice time. American football requires helmets, pads, immense financial investment. Even basketball needs a perfectly flat surface and a specialized hoop.
True.
But football, it requires absolutely zero expensive equipment. It requires something, literally anything, that rolls.
Ah, the classic rolled-up sock argument.
Exactly, because it's true. I mean, children have built this sport using rolled-up newspaper tied with string, plastic bottles, or tape. And for goals, 2 backpacks, 2 rocks, 2 flip-flops.
Yeah.
I argue that this complete lack of socioeconomic friction is the actual engine of expansion. The game crossed oceans instantaneously, not because of FIFA, but because it is driven by universal human emotions: joy, heartbreak, community. If you can kick, you can play. That radical accessibility is the true conqueror here.
Okay, I'll admit the visual of kids playing with rolled up newspaper in an alleyway is a powerful one. I cannot deny the grassroots accessibility. But let me push back on the idea that this accessibility alone causes global conquest.
How does it not?
Because kids invent games with sticks all the time. They don't form billion-dollar global ecosystems out of them. To scale globally, you need an engine. And historically, that engine was the British Empire, which essentially provided the hardware for the sport.
The hardware?
Yes, as the empire expanded, sailors, railway engineers, and merchants systematically introduced the formalized game to foreign ports. They didn't just bring a ball, they brought the codified rules. Without this English hardware, the sport would have splintered into 1,000 localized folk games, completely mutually unintelligible.
Okay, you refer to the British rules as the hardware, implying that the structure is the most important part of the machine. But let's look at what actually happened. The British exported a very rigid set of parameters, but the rest of the world entirely rewrote the software.
Rewrote the software? The rules were strictly enforced?
The rules were enforced, yeah, but the play was reinvented. Consider the Netherlands and their invention of total football in the 1970s. They didn't just play differently, they weaponized the spatial constraints of the British pitch dimensions.
Interesting word choice. Weaponized.
Well, it's true, because the rules dictate a fixed boundary and 11 players. The Dutch realized they could dynamically swap positions, defenders becoming attackers, attackers dropping back, to manipulate the space on the field. They didn't just adopt the rules, they hacked them.
Right, but
Or look at Brazil. They didn't just play English football. They infused it with Jenga, a rhythmic martial arts-like fluidity born from their own culture. The game didn't conquer the world because the British rules were so brilliant. It conquered the world because those rules acted as a cultural mirror.
I mean,
If the appeal was just the hardware, England would have remained the absolute master of the sport. But it quickly became a global language with distinct, vibrant regional dialects.
but notice what you just said when describing the Dutch. You said they weaponized the spatial constraints. Who defined those spatial constraints?
Well, the British.
Exactly. The British rule makers. You're praising the cultural creativity, but I'd argue that creativity only exists because of the architectural constraints placed upon it. Let's look at the offside rule, for instance.
Oh boy. It's a polarizing rule, to be sure.
It is. But think about the mechanics of it. This isn't just an administrative penalty. It is a piece of top-down engineering that dictates human behavior on the pitch. Without offside, what happens?
Goal hanging.
Right. An attacker simply camps right in front of the opponent's goal, waiting for a long pass. There is no build-up. There is no tactical midfield battle. It would just be a tedious exercise in long ball ping-pong.
I wouldn't call it tedious, but I see your point.
The offside rule, requiring the attacker to have at least 2 opponents between themselves and the goal line at the moment a pass is played, compresses the playable space. It forces both teams to move organically as a single breathing unit. It shifts the game from a test of sheer opportunism to a test of passing, timing, and collective strategy. The rules engineered the flow of the game.
The offside rule certainly engineers the tactical midfield, I'll give you that. It creates a puzzle, but you're conflating the administrative constraints with the music of the game itself. No child goes to sleep dreaming of a perfectly executed offside trap.
Some defenders might,
Maybe, but you're praising the frame when people actually stare at the painting.
but the frame guarantees the painting makes sense. Consider another structural triumph. British referee Ken Aston. During the 1966 World Cup, there was a profound communication breakdown on the pitch because of language barriers.
Right. Players didn't know they were being sent off.
Exactly. Players didn't realize they had been officially cautioned. So Aston is sitting at a traffic light, and he realizes that red and yellow are universally understood signals. He invents the yellow and red cards. This is top-down engineered brilliance. It created a universal visual language that required absolutely no translation, instantly understandable to a fan in Tokyo, Buenos Aires, or London.
Yes, the traffic light system is a clever piece of design, I'm not denying that, but it is essentially an administrative patch trying to contain a game that fundamentally resists being tamed.
Resists being tamed?
Absolutely. Think about how heavily engineered modern football is today. We have VAR, video assistant referees, reviewing millimeter offsides from a dozen camera angles. We have goal line technology that sends a signal to a referee's watch in a fraction of a second. We have AI tracking sprint velocity and heart rates.
And it improves the game.
But despite all of this heavy technological scaffolding, the heart of the sport remains immune to algorithmic prediction.
Well, because of the human element.
Exactly. Scientists can build predictive models factoring in weather, injuries, and tactics. Yet one unexpected bounce, one slip on wet grass, one moment of pure individual chaos completely shatters the algorithmic model.
Sure.
The institutions keep trying to sanitize and control the game, but billions of people watch because the 90 minutes are intrinsically immune to prediction. The appeal lies entirely in the fact that the sport refuses to be completely controlled.
But that chaos is only meaningful because it happens within a highly formalized structure. If we want to talk about how football truly became a global monolith, we have to talk about the creation of the World Cup itself. The stage is what gives the chaos its meaning.
Okay, let's talk about the World Cup.
Let's go back to 1930. Football was popular globally, yes, but it was plagued by endless, unresolvable arguments.
Over who is the best.
Right. Was it England, Uruguay, Argentina? Without a formalized stage, sporting supremacy was purely anecdotal pub talk. So FIFA engineers a 1930 World Cup in Uruguay. And remember, the logistics of this were borderline insane. You couldn't just hop on a commercial flight.
No, a massive logistical gamble.
13 nations traveled by ship for weeks across the Atlantic just to participate. A monumental gamble, but they did it. And when Uruguay defeated Argentina 4-2 in front of 93,000 fans in Montevideo, it changed human history.
It was certainly a spectacle.
It was the invention of a definitive global meritocracy. The genius of the 1930 World Cup wasn't just getting ships across the Atlantic. FIFA institutionalized the concept of the world champion, engineering a stage where national pride could be quantified.
Quantified national pride.
Yes, the tournament bracket, the qualification cycles, the objective crowning of a champion, the institutional framework created the stakes. Without the World Cup structure, your unengineered chaos has no global stage to be witnessed.
The 1930 tournament was a logistical feat. Absolutely. But I vehemently reject the idea that the tournament framework itself is the primary draw. The stakes aren't the bracket. The stakes are human. You're arguing that people tune in for the definitive global meritocracy, but I argue they tune in for the actors.
You mean the players over the tournament itself?
Entirely. Let's move forward from 1958 to 1958. A skinny 17-year-old kid named Pelé steps onto the pitch in Sweden. Most 17-year-olds are worrying about a math test, right? Pelé is carrying the psychological weight of a nation.
He was incredible.
He scores a hat trick in the semifinal and twice in the final. He didn't just win a trophy. His effortless grace made millions of children around the world believe they wanted a touch of football. Or let's look at the 1986 World Cup and Diego Maradona.
The match against England.
Right. Within a span of just 4 minutes, Maradona encapsulates the entire duality of football. First, he scores the hand of God, a goal punched in with his fist, completely missed by the referee. It was a moment of pure, cunning street smarts that mocked the very rules you praise.
A blatant foul.
But then, 4 minutes later, he dribbles past 5 English players to score the goal of the century. One moment of controversy, one moment of unparalleled masterpiece. The rules didn't create that duality. The human being did.
It's a powerful narrative, certainly.
And it continues today. Look at the modern era with Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. When billions tune in to watch Messi's effortless fluidity versus Ronaldo's engineered physical dominance, they aren't tuning in to see who can optimize a FIFA scoring bracket.
No, they're watching the players.
They're engaging in a proxy war of philosophies, nature versus nurture, art versus industry. The rules just happen to be the excuse for the exhibition. They are tuning in for the heroes, not the administrators.
I hear their romance in that, and framing Messi and Ronaldo as a proxy war of philosophies is a beautiful way to understand their rivalry. But let me ask you a very practical question. How do you even know who Messi and Ronaldo are?
Because of their generational talent.
Because their talent was captured, measured, and broadcast by a massive institutional scaffolding. Those legends did not emerge in a vacuum. Pelé needed the meticulously organized framework of the World Cup to elevate him from a local prodigy to a global icon.
But the talent still comes first.
But talent without structure dissipates. If football hadn't been standardized, if every country played a slightly different variation of the rules with different ball sizes, different pitch dimensions, or different match lengths, their achievements wouldn't translate.
I see what you're saying.
A goal in Argentina would mean something entirely different than a goal in Spain. The structure is what gives the individual brilliance its historical weight. The institutions built the magnifying glass.
Well, the structure is merely the magnifying glass. It is not the light itself. If you take away the FIFA rulebook, humans will still find a way to kick a ball and marvel at the most skilled among them. But if you take away the simplicity, the grassroots accessibility, the joy of that barefoot child playing on a dusty road, the entire enterprise collapses.
Well, they rely on that mass participation, obviously.
To feed the professional leagues, exactly. The reason those top leagues have such an incredible pipeline of talent, the reason they can continuously unearth a Maradona or a Messi, is because the game is being played in every alleyway, on every beach, and in every favela on Earth.
Right.
The formal leagues, the World Cup, the billion-dollar broadcasting rights, they are just harvesting what the streets naturally produce. The barrier to entry is zero. That is the engine.
Okay, I think we're circling the core of our disagreement here, and it is a fascinating tension. The streets produce the talent, absolutely. But as we draw our arguments to a close, my position remains that football's transformation from ancient, localized folk games to a permanent fixture of human culture required a common language.
The rules.
Standardized rules, visionary institutions like McGregor's Football League, and the global meritocracy of the World Cup. These institutions took a simple physical activity and engineered it into a globally sustainable, culturally unifying force.
And I maintain that the game ultimately survives, thrives, and conquers because of its profound simplicity. The boardrooms and the rule makers built the grand stages, absolutely. But the heart of the game remains with the people.
The players.
A barefoot child on a beach with a rolled-up sock is playing the exact same fundamental game as the millionaire professionals on television. That lack of a barrier, that intrinsic, undeniable emotional accessibility, is what actually makes football the world's language.
It seems we've reached the point of convergence, even if we weigh the elements differently. We can both acknowledge that the institutions undeniably built the global stage, the stadiums, the broadcasting networks, the structural treaties of the sport. Yet it is the intrinsic accessibility of the game and the individual brilliance of the actors that provide the compelling drama to fill that stage.
Absolutely. And as technology continues to reshape the sport, with AI tracking, automated offsides, and data analytics, we are seeing this exact tension play out in real time today.
Oh, definitely.
The institutions will keep trying to perfect the rules, and the players will keep finding ways to inject pure, unpredictable passion. The story of football's global conquest is far from over.
Indeed. We'll leave it to our listeners to decide whether the true power of the global game lies in its universal rules or its beautifully simple heart. You know, we started today by comparing football to the heavy stone roads of ancient empires.
We did.
But perhaps the real difference is that a stone road eventually crumbles and fades into the earth, while a ball just keeps rolling.